Morning students, those who are there in the class can put up their names and numbers for the attendance purpose. Yeah, Vidhi, you have joined from an outside ID, beta. I'll have to remove you. You'll have to join from Marwadi ID only. You won't join from any other ID. Okay, so good morning, all of you. Is Vidhi there? Is Vidhi there in the class? Students, is Vidhi there in the class?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Vidhi, you have joined from a non-Marwadi ID. You have to join
No,
from your Marwadi ID only.
sorry, ma'am.
Okay. I'll just remove you and you can come back from your original ID. Morning, Akansha. So, shall we start? Yesterday we were talking about the uses of quantity theory of money. Well, good morning everyone. While talking about the quantity theory of money, we were trying to understand that what is the relation between the supply of money and the price levels. And we got to understand that the supply of money and the price level are something which go on hand in hand with one another. So that was the first use of the quantity theory of money given by Fisher, or we can say the theory of exchange. What we'll do is today we'll move ahead with the second use, and that is the demand for money. Uh, this is something which was not specifically mentioned, but the demand for money is implicit to his quantity theory because he is studying the quantity theory. So, in Fisher's quantity theory of money, it is stated by later that the demand for money depends on the value of transaction. Excuse me. Give me a moment. Yeah. It was mentioned by later that the demand for money depends upon the value of transaction which is to be undertaken in the economy, and that is equal to the constant fraction of those transactions. This is something like, given the supply of money, now when we are in equilibrium, the demand of money must be equal to supply of money. That is what they're telling us. Now what they're actually telling us, ये तो हमें कभी definition से समझ में आता ही नहीं. For that we have to understand that what the theory is all about. But yes, from whatever it is laid down by later, if we are having a rough idea that the demand of money, or yes, it depends on whatever transactions we are going to undertake in the entire economy, and whatever fractions of those transactions are going to be there. That is somewhat which we can understand that this is something which they are trying to state. Now, the equilibrium of demand for money can be derived from a simple equation that was given by Fisher in the quantity theory of money, and that is MV is equal to PT. Now, what is MV and what is PT? You are aware of that, right? Are you aware of that? What
Yes,
is
ma'am.
MV? What about others? They're sleeping?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now what are we going to consider in these equations is that one by one we'll be trying to solve these equations where we will be trying to derive a correct equation out of whatever equations we have done till now. So till yesterday we have been through this computation of MV is equal to PT, where M is the money circulation, V is the velocity of money, P is the weighted average, and T is the sum of all the transactions. That is what this was all about. Now here we are stating that when V and T, that is velocity and the sum of total transactions, are constant, then what can happen to the equation of the demand of money? So when both of them are constant, we can actually try to calculate what M is all about. That is, what is the quantity of money in circulation all about? So when you just want to calculate the circulation of money, and you do not want to connect it, and you do not want to connect it to this velocity of money, then what we can do? We will shift it This you are aware that whenever something is multiplied and it is shifted to the next side, it becomes a divisor. It turns out to be a division. So now what we'll do is we'll shift the velocity to the next side because we only want what is the demand of money. We do not want to check whether right hand side is equal to left hand side or not. So what we'll do now, in order to just in order to get the value of money, we will shift v to the right hand side, and here m is equal to 1 by v into p and t hash. So the statement that was laid by later, they said that in equilibrium, but the demand of money and the supply of money are equal. Just a second, meter. What is happening? Can someone please share the link with Vidhi? Because I don't know why she's not able to join again. Okay, so now when the supply of money and the demand of money is equal, we can say that m is equal to 1 by v into pt can be the demand of money and can be the supply of money because they are both equal. So here in from equation 6, what we can do is so from this equation 6 we will derive something. What we will derive is that as this MD and MS, MD stands for the money, the demand of money, and MS is the supply of money. So M in equation 6 can be taken as MS or MD, whatever we want, and the term 1 by V multiplied by P and T as MD, because here they are saying that money supply is equal to demand of money. So we can derive that if M is taken as MS, then the entire situation, the entire equation which is remaining on the right hand side can be termed as MD. So it can be constructed that at equilibrium, the demand of money equals to 1 by V. That is the fraction of the total value of transactions. Now, what is the total value of transaction? That can be termed as PT hash. T is the total sum and P is the price. So that can be assumed. This is all working on assumption. They're just trying to derive something. Now, assuming that 1 by V is constant, because here we said that V and T hash are constant, right? So the similar thing is being taken over here. In after deriving from equation 6, we are saying that 1 by V is constant, because if V is constant, so we can consider 1 also as constant, and that can be equal to K. The money demand equation can be written as MD is equal to K into PT. MD is here, 1 by V is K and PT. Now, the money demand is equal to money by price. That is the demand for real cash. This is the equation for demand for real cash. That is money demand is equal to M divided by P. Is anyone noting down anything?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm waiting for an answer. Is anyone noting down anything? I'm just getting answer from Bhuvinam, no one else. बाकी सब मैम के पीपीटी वो अपलोड करने का वेट कर रहे हैं, राइट? मत लिखो मेरा. Okay, so here MD is equal to M by P, which is the demand for real cash balance. So here we have turned up till equation number 7, in which MD was equal to K into PT. Now, when we are saying MD is equal to M by P, then that derivation will be done further. Now here, according to the Fisher's quantity theory of money, the demand of money at equilibrium is equal to the constant fraction of the total value of transactions. That is, earlier we were saying that at equilibrium, the demand of money is equal to the supply of money. So in equation 7, we have seen that MD is equal to K into PT. That is, the total demand of money at equilibrium is equal to the constant fraction, that is K, multiplied by the total value of transaction, that is P by T. Now, here they are stating that since the economy is always in equilibrium, that is not the actual state, but the classical theory of money has stated that the economy is all not the classical theory of money. The classical theory given by Say has stated that the economy is always in equilibrium. Now, the demand of money is always equal to the supply of money as per the classical postulate. So, considering that PT is equal to Y is equal to the aggregate national income. PT is the total value of transaction, Y is income, and aggregate national income is aggregate national income. So, the classical demand function can be expressed as MD, that is money, demand for money, is equal to K into Y. K is constant and Y is income. So this equation basically over here implies that according to the classical theory, the aggregate demand of money is K proportion of national income. That is a constant proportion of national income. Whatever your demand of money is, that is always in proportion of national income. That is what we are deriving over here. Basically, the entire derivation of the demand theory of money was trying to state that the demand of money is something which depends on the value of transactions to be undertaken in the economy, and that is equal to the fraction of those transactions. This is something which we derived over here, that the money demand is equal to the value of total transactions. K into PT. PT is the value standing for the total value of transactions. See here. Thus can be constructed that in equilibrium, demand of money equals to 1 by V fraction of the total value of transaction. 1 by V became constant and the money demand was equal to PT. So that this statement that the demand of money depends on a constant fraction of those transactions was proved over here, that the money demand is equal to the total transactions of goods and services that is taken down in an economy. Are we clear with this? Further, the money demand is equal to income is something which was stated over here, because the classical theory says that income is always equal to the aggregate national income. So if PT is equal to income, then MD is equal to PT. So MD is equal to income. That implies the aggregate demand of money is in proportion to national income. This is what we were trying to derive from the given equation. And now there are certain assumptions and criticisms to this theory. So we'll try to go through that. What are those criticism? What are those assumptions? But have you understood the theory till now? Have you understood the theory? I'm giving this class 1 more minute. If there is anyone who wants to join the class, please inform your friends that they can join right now. As soon as this clock strikes 9:16, I'll bar anyone from entering the class. Am I clear? And whomsoever wants to make an entry of their attendance, make it right now. Afterwards, I just want answers to the questions that I am placing. I do not want your names and numbers to be visible. I'm giving you this last minute. You can make an entry if you want. And if someone thinks that they'll leave the meeting and they'll come back, let me tell you, I'll not admit anyone inside. Because now I'm turning off the link. Okay, so now I'll peacefully continue further. So we'll go ahead with the assumptions of the theory. There are certain assumptions on which the Fisher's theory is based on. See, this is what I was talking about. But what happened, beta? Why are you late? But you just joined the class. What happened? Why are you late?
I'm due to network connection.
Daily network connection problem hota hai?
I am late for the first time.
Okay, now what are those assumptions? The first one is P is a passive factor in the equation of exchange, which is affected by other factors. That is, the price of the goods is affected by other factors. Then the another assumption is that the proportion of M dash to M remain constant. That is, the money in bank and the money in hand is the proportion which will remain constant. The next assumption is that V and V hash are assumed to be constant and are independent of making changes in the money and money on hand. That is, the proportion of M and M dash will remain constant, and these two being so money at bank are constant, and B and B are assumed to be constant. If we are not saying that they are actually constant, they are assumed to be constant and are independent to make changes in M and M dash. Now, T will also remain constant and is independent to other factors such as M M dash, V and V dash. There's something missing in the equation. I'll just change it whenever I have time. But till then, good. Okay. So basically, what they're telling us that things are constant in this, but at the same time, okay. So basically, all the terms that is V, V hash, M hash, things are remaining constant at a point of time or other. But at the same time, all of them are independent from one another also, and at the same time, we can say that they are able to make changes in everyone, if at all any changes coming into their particular genre. So it is assumed that the demand of money is proportional to the value of transactions, and the supply of money is assumed to be exogenously determined constant, that is externally determined as constant. uh, Kids, please inform your friends that now they'll not be able to join the class anymore, because it's high time that you people start turning up on time. But आप लोगों से ये नहीं हो पाता, मुझसे वो नहीं हो पाता. Now the theory is applicable in the long run also. That is, this quantity theory of money is something which is applicable in the long run also, and it is based on the assumption that the existence of full employment is there in the economy. So when everything else is constant, the price is turning up as a passive factor in the equation of exchange, and the everything is though being constant, but they are independent to make changes in their respective area. That is, B and B dash are able to make changes in M and M dash. T is remaining constant, and it is also an independent factor from all other factors of the given equation. Basically, only one factor, that is P, which is the price, is the one which passive in this equation, that is dependent on all other factors. Who is this? Okay, so these are the basic 8 assumptions which we have to understand. Basically, if you'll come to a summation of all these, you'll be able to see that at the end they are saying that everything is constant and P is in a passive relation with all the other components, and the theory is a long run theory, and in long run everything comes to an equilibrium. So when everything comes to an equilibrium, we come to a level that is called full employment in the economy. And they are also saying that the supply of money is constant. Okay, so when we are aware of the theory and we are aware of the assumptions of the theory, there are certain criticisms to the Fisher's quantity theory of money which were given. And there are not just one or two criticisms, there are many. See, this is criticizing or critically analyzing something are two different things. Criticizing something is you are wrong for a particular reason and hence something needs to be modified in you. And critically analyzing is informing a person that what correction is required. So what happened over here is this theory was basically criticized. There were criticisms to the Fisher's theory. Now, what criticism was there? Anyone can please read it? The first one, that is truism for me.
May I?
Please go ahead.
According to the Keynes, the quantitative theory of money is truism. Fisher's equation of exchange is simple truism because it states that the total quantity of money, MV plus M dash and V dash, paid for goods and services must equal their value, PT, because it cannot be accepted today that a certain percentage change in the quantity of money leads to the same percentage change in the price level.
So, what is this telling us? That the theory of money is a truism. That is just because it states that the total quantity is some. What is this? See, guys, either try not to be late or don't bother me on my personal windows. ये सच झूठ मेरे को अच्छा नहीं लगता. The people who are left outside because they did not join the class. There are some people who were in the class and due to internet connection, I'll say they were thrown out by me. When they tried to join back in, they were able to get inside. Am I right, Akansha? Are you there still? या फिर से बाहर निकाल दिया गूगल ने?
Yes, ma'am.
When Akansha tried to join back, she was able to join. Because I know she was already there inside. But at least I should be aware that a person is there inside. I'm having examples in your own class when I allow people to get in. Okay, so let me continue. I do not want to give you any sort of lecture over here regarding your time management because that is very bad. Okay, so what happens in this theory is it is stated to be the theory of truism, and they're also stating that the total quantity of money paid for goods and services must always be equal to the price and the total sum of money. But at the same time, it cannot be accepted today that a certain percentage change in the quantity of money will lead to a same percentage change in the price level. There can be more money in the market because people are having this wish of accumulating all sorts of amounts. So the amount of money which is available in the market can change, but at the same time, with that increase in the amount, there won't be any increase in the price level of the goods. That is why we say that this is that truism on which this theory was based in by itself is unable to hold its own grounds. The second assumption that is taken into account was that other things are not equal. Or we have taken an assumption that M dash, V dash are staying equal, but actually in reality they are not equal. The direct and proportionate relationship between the quantity of money and price level in Fisher's equation is based on the assumption that other things will remain unchanged. This is like the price and demand here, demand in microeconomics, we have done the this price and demand thing, na? That whenever price changes, demand of a particular product changes, keeping everything else as constant. So here also they have done the same thing. They have stated that the quantity of money and the price level are in direct and proportionate relationship with one another, but in a condition that other things will remain unchanged. But in real life, is it possible? Is it possible that nothing will change?
No.
Anyone else who thinks that this is possible, that everything else will remain same? Yes, we live in a dynamic nature, so things, it is not possible for everything to remain constant. Who thinks that things will remain same? That in the working economy, there are certain articles which might remain same in a shorter period of time. No one thinks that? Tell Soham to join back. So basically, in real life, this V hash, T, they are not constant. Moreover, they are not even independent of money and price. Rather, all the elements which are mentioned in this Fisher's equation are interrelated and interdependent to one another. If there is more money, there are chances that the price might increase, price might fall, velocity might increase, velocity might fall. So a change in money may cause the change in the velocity of money also. If there is more money in the market, there are chances that the money might flow more in the market. That condition should always be taken into consideration. Okay. So consequently, what happens is the price level may change more in proportion to the change in the quantity of money. That the money has not increased that much, but because of any external factor, the price level may change. Similarly, a change in price level may cause the change in money, or the rise in price level may necessitate the flow of money to increase. Moreover, the volume of transactions is also affected by the changes in price. If the price is more, then the transactions can be more or less. It depends on the situation in which we are staying at that point of time in the market. At the same time, when the price rises or falls, the volume of business transactions can also rise or fall. If the price is more, the transactions will be less. If the price is less, the transactions might be more. Anything can happen. Moreover, if we are having any future expectation, then that also affects on the proportion of money. अरे भाई, not only this, but money is not independent even from the total value, that is the total transactional value. An increase in the volume of business transaction requires an increase in the supply of money too. It is not also that you can only increase the volume of business transactions, but how will you meet these transactions? In order to meet these transactions, you need certain money supply. So everything is basically, when someone is saying that everything in the equation of given by Fisher is constant, we cannot expect the economy to remain constant for an entire period of time. The economy is something which is very volatile. It will keep on moving. And when the economy will keep on moving, so will all these aspects also. Thus, the condition that everything else will remain constant cannot hold true for any equation. This is some basic and simple problem with the economic equations, and that is they are made on an assumption that something or the other will be constant. But when we are actually viewing the economy on whole, nothing is constant. So this issue keeps on arising. Then is the constants relate to different time. And this is something which was given by Dr. Lamb. He criticizes this Fisher's equation for multiplying M and V, that is money and the velocity of money, because money relates to the point of time and V relates to the period of time. This was the question which Mahi or Dhruvi were having yesterday. Which of you were having this question?
A difference of time?
Yes.
I was having it.
Yes. So here we are having your reply. This is generally that I tell in my class that beta आगे का थोड़ा सा एक दिन का wait कर लो, you'll get a reply to your question. But it's okay, you ask the questions on the time also. Now here M is which is relating to the point of time. That is at that particular second or at that particular minute. And V is something which is relating to the period of time. That in how much period? Within a year, within a month, within an hour. It is not point of time. It is not 5:55. M is 5:55. V is from 5 to 6. That is the difference. And that is why someone is saying that if you multiply the point of time with the period of time, the point of time is something which is static in nature, whereas the another one is dynamic. It may change. So technically, these two things are inconsistent with one another. And to multiply something which cannot be compared to one another is again not right. You cannot compare a static variable with a dynamic variable. The dynamic variable is going to change. The static variable will remain same for eternity. If you have spent money at 8:50, like I'll give you a very simple example of yourself only. If you have joined the class before 9, before 9:10, then you have joined the class before 9:10. But if you haven't joined the class till 9:10 and then you keep on joining from 9:10 to 9:45, nothing is going to change. At the same time, if you keep on joining between the time of 8:55 to 9:10, then you'll be able to join multiple point of time. You can say I've joined the class 4 times because you'll be able to do that. But you cannot compare both these things. That was something which was stable. The other situation, that is the situation between 9:10 to 9:11, it changed. So you cannot compare these situations. Similarly, you cannot compare and you cannot multiply something which is having a different consistency. You cannot multiply something which is constant with something which is dynamic. आप पानी में मिट्टी नहीं मिला सकते, मिट्टी थोड़े थोड़े टाइम बाद नीचे सेटल हो ही जाएगी. Because water is something which keeps on flowing. Sand is sand, it will settle down. So here the Professor Lamb has said that in the Fisher's theory, the constant variable was multiplied by a dynamic variable which is non-comparable to one another, and hence the theory doesn't hold true. Then it fails to measure the value of money. Now, what is Fisher's equation doing? It is able to measure the demand of money. It is able to measure the supply of money, but it does not measure the purchasing power of money. It only measures the cash transaction, that is the volume of business transactions of all kinds, of the volume of trade in the community during an year. That is what they are calculating. They are not calculating that what is the purchasing power of money. How much amount can money purchase? That is not being calculated in the Fisher's equation, because now the purchasing power of money is something that relates to the transaction for the purchase of goods or services for consumption. Thus, the quantity theory fails to measure the value of money. By not calculating the purchasing power, basically in this equation we are unable to calculate that what is the value of money that M is holding. Okay, so I will stop over here because we are having other parts also, or either I'll cover the next one, that is the fifth point, that is weak theory, and then I'll stop. Now here, according to the Crowther, the quantity theory of money is something which is very weak in many respects. The first one is it cannot explain why. Now there are fluctuations in the price level in the short run, but this theory of money is saying that there is no fluctuation, and moreover, it is not able to explain that why is it happening. Secondly, it gives undue importance to the price level as if changes in the price were the most critical article in the entire economic system. But the change in price is also derived by something else. So we cannot say that this is something which is very important or the most important thing. So it is not able to give us a reply to why it is giving undue importance to an aspect, that is price level. It is having this misplaced emphasis on the quantity of money as the principle of change in the price level. That it is only the quantity of money due to which the price level might change in a particular trade cycle. So these are the three aspects on which the Crowther is saying, Professor Crowther is saying that the theory is very weak. Why? Because the price may not rise despite there is an increase in money during depression. Whenever there is a period of depression in the economy, the government tries to pump in money from every aspect, but there is no increase in price whatsoever. At the same time, it might not decline with the reduction of money when there is a boom. There's a boom in the economy. The economy is growing fourfolds. But even if you're trying to extract money out of the economy, the prices are not going to fall. They'll remain same. So, moreover, the low prices during depression are not caused by the shortage of quantity of money. Money is enough, but it is not flowing. And at the same time, the price rise is not caused by the abundance of money. There is not too much money, but there is inflation. So the quantity theory of money is best, and at the best is an imperfect guide to the cause of trade cycle in the short period of time, according to Crowther. तो ये कौन है? Okay, so I'll stop over here. I hope all of you must have mentioned your attendance in the chat box. If anyone is having any doubt regarding what we have done today, that is the theory, the assumption, and the criticism, not all the criticism, just 5 criticisms, they can put up a question if you are not having any doubt. Then thank you for joining. You can leave.